Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is Monday, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My name is Andre Anderson. I am both host and founder of BSTL. What does BSTL stand for? It stands for Building Something That Lasts. And if you haven't had a chance to subscribe yet to our page, please go ahead and do so. We're on a bunch of platforms, including I think Apple. I think we're also on Spotify. And then, of course, you can find us on RSS. So let me just jump right into this thing. I'm so excited. I've got a friend online here, and we have known each other literally for more than 30 plus years. I won't say how many years because I guess that way you'll know that we're not young anymore. So, Michelle Davis, welcome to BSTL's podcast. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you so much, Andre. It's such a pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
And so here's the thing. One of the things I've been trying to stay away from is reading people's bios because at times they can be a little bit impersonal because they highlight, the highs of the person. So what I'd like to do before we get into our conversation, and I will introduce it in a moment, please tell us about your business. You are an entrepreneur, and I want to make sure that I give you a strong plug early in this podcast conversation to ensure that people who could use your service, they know how to find you.
It's wonderful. So, yes, I am the CEO of NVD Consulting Inc. We are a management consulting firm based in Toronto, and we work with not for profit leaders and business owners to help them deepen their diversity, equity, and inclusion work. We also help with research, evaluation, and I also support a number of Black small business owners, helping them with things like visioning and accessing funding. So you can find me our website, mbdconsulting.ca, as well as on social media.
Okay, nice. And I've already referred at least one person your way, so I know because I did get some really, really, really good feedback. So please, let's support Michelle Davis and her business, to which she is the CEO, and I'm so happy to be able to say that today. So, anyways, Michelle, today we want to have a conversation, right? And of course, on this podcast, we talk about all things leadership based, right? We're trying to create a space for real, authentic conversations around leadership to happen. And of course, I know that you've got your gurus that are in the industry, and they've got a lot to say about how leadership can happen. But I do believe that leadership is something that is ever changing, ever morphing. And even though there are some models that are proven, I still think that there are more things that we have yet to touch on and evaluate. And sometimes, depending on the platform that you have, it makes it difficult for you to add some of the nuances to leadership that are still out there, that are still developing and still growing. So today, I hope you don't mind, but we are going to talk a little bit about women in leadership, equity, and diversity, with the hope that we will help not just women, but also men to have a greater understanding about what that kind of looks like from a leadership piece. So I don't know, maybe we can start off this way by talking a bit about what it means to you to be a woman who's leading and also an entrepreneur in her own organization. Let's start there, Michelle, if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Andre, that's a great place to start. I absolutely love being, the CEO of my company, leading a team, leading a business. But it's very interesting because my background is science. As you may remember, I'm a math and science nerd.
Yeah,
I never took a business course in high school
right.
or at university because unfortunately we do that either or. Either you're doing science and math or you're doing arts and business, right? So you
Yeah.
choose, we often, force students with timetabling and other things to choose one or the other. However, I come from a history of small business owners. So both sets of my grandparents are business owners. One grandfather was a tanner, so he made leather goods before he got into real estate and owned a number of businesses and properties in Jamaica as well as in New York. Both my other grandfather was a butcher, and both my grandmothers sold in the local market.
Ah, nice.
So yeah, so my father is self-employed and has been my entire life. So it was when I went to Jamaica a number of years ago after finishing university, and I would just be in awe of all these businesses that I would see, and I would think to myself, how did they come up with that idea?
Mm-hmm.
How did they know to start that? And I think it was just something that started percolating internally for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I moved back to Toronto, and I just started reading and kind of exploring what business looks like, what it feels like. Back in 2015, when I was between contracts, I started my consulting firm.
Mm-hmm.
But it was tough. It was tough trying to figure it out, getting income through the door. My son was very young, trying to figure out all those pieces. So after almost a year, I got a job offer, and I took that job. But it never left me,
Mm-hmm.
that desire for business. And so in 2020, like many people, my spirit nudged me to say, yeah, it's time to move. It's time to move. So I took a year to plan, and um, then still had I did some consulting work part time, just
Mm-hmm.
kind of kept a few clients and such, but then decided that it was time for me to launch full time into it. So I have been for almost 2 years now, and I love it. I love the freedom. I love the flexibility. I can take off in the afternoon and go watch my son's basketball game, or drive him and his friends to their
Mm-hmm.
games, or he plays in the U.S. tournaments sometimes. I can take a day off and the weekend off and go because
Yeah.
I decide that. But I also love leading a team. So small
Mm-hmm.
team now, growing. I'll be doing some hiring coming up, and people management is one of my strengths. So really
Mm-hmm.
motivating people, encouraging people, speaking truth to
Mm-hmm.
them, supporting their goals. Where do they want to go? How can I, help them to get there? So being the head of an organization really allows me to tap in a really meaningful way into my strengths,
Mm-hmm.
and it also allows me to learn and test things. So I say
Mm-hmm.
to my team, we're a learning organization, so we'll learn something one day, we'll come back to the team the next day to share what we learned, and then we're implementing it, we're trying it, we're testing it. So being able to be nimble to try and test things and see what works and doesn't work, and then continuous improvement. I really enjoy those aspects of business and leadership.
So I would imagine, Michelle, and thank you for sharing that, because I think part of understanding women in leadership through the lens of your eyes is giving a little bit of a context. And I think context is important because it helps us to understand the thing that kind of drives you. So I would imagine, as an entrepreneur, a CEO of your company, that you have stumbled, bumped into, been blindsided by some challenges that you have
Mm-hmm.
observed. And it's not to say that, well, at least maybe I should say this. It's not to say that men don't have challenges in leadership and being entrepreneurs. I think everybody has a challenge. But
Mm-hmm.
maybe there are some things that you have identified that are issues that you are overcoming and have overcome as a woman. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, yes, I can. So one of the things is, and the research supports this, that women-owned and women-led businesses tend to be smaller than those owned and led by men. They
Mm-hmm.
tend not to access funding, whether it's loans or grants, to compared to as many men that do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course as women we may be mothers as well. So still we're heading a company, but we still have to manage the household. We
Yes.
still have to be parents to our children in ways that sometimes men don't have to be, or in ways that are different than perhaps men are. So I think those are some real challenges. We all may also be the sandwich generation. So we may have our own children, and we also have our parents to care for.
Mm-hmm.
So I know, we were just talking before we started about our parents, and we're at that stage where, yeah, we need to check in with our parents every day, and we need to go to appointments with them, or they need our advice or help with something. So those are some of the that work life balance that we
Mm-hmm.
always talk about,
Mm-hmm.
that we're always aiming for, but we seem to miss terribly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we've seen that, especially the last few years, that um, how elusive that can be.
Mm-hmm.
So I think those are some of the things that I've seen as women entrepreneurs, and really just owning,
Mm-hmm.
who we are, and if we've been called to
Mm-hmm.
start a company and to do this work and to impact the lives of not only our clients and customers, but our staff and our team, being able to step boldly into that.
So let me ask you this
And
question then,
mm-hmm,
Michelle. And I think it's important that you've touched on this idea around work-life balance, right? So yes, you've
mm-hmm,
identified this kind of sandwich thing that happens between parenting and then on some level at times parenting the parents, right? Because now they're
mm-hmm,
getting older. But from a
mm-hmm,
business perspective, what does that look like? How are you creating the balance, right? Because the thing is, you can have a
mm-hmm,
thriving organization that is doing well, and those that you service, they are happy because the thing that you've given to them, it's exemplary, right? But after the camera's off, after the Zoom meeting has been ended, after you've left the office, you've now got to drive your wiped out, you know, how are you creating the balance? Or maybe what you can tell us is how is it that you have not done so well, but in hindsight, this might be a better way to do it?
that was a question. So for me, yes, I'm very strict. So I don't work after in the evening. Once I log off, I'm off. I try not to do work on the weekends as well. I would say 99% of the time, I don't necessarily have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that I did is I hired.
Mm.
So, and I was in and out a year into my business full time. I said, yeah, I've got to hire. So I hired a virtual assistant,
Mm-hmm.
and who has been just amazing. So that takes some of the low work off of me.
Mm-hmm.
And there were things like for a whole year, I'm like, I need to start posting on social media, but I could not get
Mm-hmm.
to it.
Mm-hmm.
So having someone who can take that load and that responsibility and that work
Mm-hmm.
has really helped. And as a result, my business has grown so much
Nice.
because you're right that now that because I'm more visible online because
Mm-hmm.
of that work. So, and I mean, sometimes it's like taking a nap in the afternoon, 3 o'clock. I'm tired. I'll go stretch it on my couch.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I also like to bring a lot of joy to my work.
Okay.
So I want, right? So I'm bringing happiness. I'm smiling. I'm laughing. I'm working with clients that I really love, that I
Mm-hmm.
really enjoy working with.
Mm-hmm.
I bring people on my team again that I really enjoy working with. So I'm very careful as well, or try to be,
Mm-hmm.
in the types of projects that I take on and the clients that I take on. If
Mm-hmm.
they're not, if I'm, kind of feeling like this isn't in line with me, I'm learning to trust my internal instincts that are telling me maybe that's not in alignment, and
Yes.
then I don't go down that road because I've learned that if I made a decision not to do that kind of work or work with that person, but I decide to do that anyway, it
Mm-hmm.
usually doesn't work out the way I want to. So honoring that internal um, feeling,
Mm-hmm.
that internal intuition, we might call it,
Mm-hmm.
um, that use that as a guide as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I try, like the past 6 months have been completely hectic. So that work life balance,
Mm-hmm.
I was really exhausted. And there was one Saturday in November because I taught last semester
Nice.
at Centennial College.
Mm-hmm.
I was exhausted. And that Saturday, I couldn't really move. I couldn't really get out of bed. I got up. I stayed in bed till about 10:30. It was pretty late for me. Went down in the kitchen, had breakfast, and like, I need to get back to bed.
Mm-hmm.
So I stayed in bed. Wasn't really sleeping, just watching a webinar, but in bed
Mm-hmm.
until about 3 o'clock. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get up. I went downstairs. I'm like, oh, it's Saturday. I need to tidy the bathroom. and my body screamed at me, "Get back
To bed.
to
Yeah.
the couch."
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
went and lay down for another hour. So listening to my body is something I'm making sure that I'm doing. If I feel tired, I need
Mm-hmm.
to rest. I can't push. I can't. And my body will shut down on me. It will start screaming at me.
Yeah.
And so I need to heed that caution. And I think for a lot of folks, taking care of our physical and mental health as leaders, as entrepreneurs, it has to be a high priority because if we don't take care of ourselves,
Yeah.
well, we can't take care of everyone else.
Oh yeah.
So a good friend of mine, we use the oxygen mask. We always say oxygen mask, and
Mm-hmm.
that when you're about to fly,
Mm-hmm.
and the flight attendants are going through the emergency procedures, and they say when the oxygen mask drops,
Mm-hmm.
you put yours on first
Yeah. Yeah.
before you help anyone else. So similarly, as a leader, as a mom, it is take care of myself, put that oxygen mask on, re-energize, rejuvenate, and then move forward.
So it's interesting, Michelle, that earlier in this conversation you talked about people management, and of
Mm-hmm.
course,
Mm-hmm.
people management is not just what you are doing with others; it's also what you're doing with yourself. But as an entrepreneur, and and look, if you disagree with me, I'm okay with it. And this is a platform for full transparency. It doesn't always have to be agreeable in terms of where we stand on things. But some would
Mm-hmm.
argue that this is a man's world, right? Some people
Mm-hmm.
would disagree. But the challenge is still going to be the same, right? So when a man walks into a room, perhaps as long as he has a commanding presence about him and maybe he speaks well, when he says, hey, I need this done by Friday, 4 o'clock p.m., no excuses, I think a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times people scramble because they can feel that vibrato in his
Mm-hmm.
voice. And of course, it's the way
Mm-hmm.
that we're socialized. In
Mm-hmm.
terms of people management, as a woman leading her own organization, are there any struggles there at times? Are there some things that you've identified? Have you had to make some adjustments, some changes?
Mm-hmm. Not that I can think of,
Mm-hmm.
because I just find it critically important to earn the respect and trust of the people who you lead. So, in any position, whether an employed position or now in business, I ensure that I'm investing in my relationships with
Mm.
staff, with colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to ask you, how are you doing? How is your
Mm-hmm.
family doing? Oh, your children. How you have children? You said your mom wasn't feeling well. How is your mom? I want to get to know
Mm-hmm.
you outside of work or business,
Yeah.
because we're human. I want to know the whole person. So part
Mm-hmm.
of even one of our values in this company is we bring our whole selves to work.
Mm.
Right? We are authentic and we bring our whole selves to work. So if somebody needs time off, that's fine. Go and do what you need to do. Take care of who you need to take care of. We'll
Mm-hmm.
see you tomorrow. So I haven't had an experience where I felt that I wasn't being heard or
Mm-hmm.
respected as a leader
Mm-hmm.
because I was a woman. I've often found quite the opposite, that yeah,
Mm-hmm.
people respected me. I mean, when I've been in employed positions where I wasn't in a leadership position,
Mm-hmm.
but others would seek me out anyway. I mean, I have had the title of leader, but I lead naturally. It's very natural to me.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
would, right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So
That's true.
people would seek me out anyways, right? So I haven't had that experience, but I know it does happen.
Mm-hmm.
I know it does happen to women where they feel they are what they say is discounted,
Mm-hmm.
what they may say is ignored,
Mm-hmm.
or their thoughts or ideas are misrepresented or taken or
Yeah.
stolen, and
Yeah.
right. And
Yeah.
so I know that that happens,
Mm-hmm.
and it is very stressful, right? It impacts our health when that
Mm-hmm.
happens,
Yeah.
um, and so what has happened perhaps is that women may feel that they have to lead like how men lead,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
but that doesn't serve us. that doesn't serve us very well. Women, we need to lead authentically. We
Yeah.
need to lead in a way that is us. So for me, that's being very connected, engaged, very supportive, very sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
That may be termed non-traditional, but
Yes.
that's who I am,
Yeah.
and that I feel works for me as well as for those
So
whom I lead. Mm-hmm.
so then here's my follow-up question to that, and I like the fact that you've said you've got to be authentically you, because
Mm-hmm.
again I think that there's a danger when somebody says, this is so and so, and they are a great leader, and I'm going to embody that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, to some degree, the challenge is that certain groups of people, ethnicities, etc., they are given an opportunity to stand up front and to lead. Because at times we live
Mm-hmm.
in a society that embraces the other as the standard of excellence for leadership. And of course, if your face is not there, your gender is not there, then how would you
Mm-hmm.
identify what the best methods for leadership are if you only have one standard? Now, with that being said, though, Michelle, and we're pivoting a little bit in our conversation, how
Mm-hmm.
are you then going to continue to build? I know that you said earlier in our conversation that you're going to be hiring. What does equity then look like for you? How are you going to, because I am certain 100%, the longer you do this thing, it is going to continue to grow and thrive because I know that you are a woman of excellence.
Mm-hmm.
But how are you
Mm-hmm.
going to ensure that 10 years down the road, you're not hiring a consultant to talk about equity because it's already become a thing that you do? What are some of the things that you are already beginning to put into place to make sure that you have that kind of balance at this level for your organization?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So much of that is being very intentional and that authenticity piece. So leading with that. So I'm writing up a job ad right now, and it includes the company's values.
Mm-hmm.
It includes a statement around equity, inclusion, and diversity.
Nice.
It includes about accessibility. If you
Mm-hmm.
need, accommodations, let us know. So being very thoughtful and intentional from, even how we write the job postings to how we conduct interviews and then who we finally select to
Mm-hmm.
be successful. So people need to know upfront the type of organization that they're applying to work with. So
Mm-hmm.
if it's not in alignment with who they are, then this job isn't for them. And I think that's really important that we build that organizational culture around, including around expectations. So I expect anyone that I work with is committed to anti-racism, is committed to equity, and most importantly, justice.
Mm-hmm.
That everyone is treated fairly, with dignity, and with respect. So those are important pieces
Mm-hmm.
that you know that I've put in place and will continue to put in place, so that, as you said, in 10 years, um, we're still living the values that we have committed.
Yeah.
So we're a very value-driven organization,
Mm-hmm.
mission driven. And so we use, I use our values and our mission to make decisions.
Yeah.
Right? Again, this project may not be for me. This client may not
Yeah.
be for me. We're always coming back to that, to center decision making.
So I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you said something that made my heart smile, right? The idea that your core values, they drive who you will actually work with. And I do have it in my notes in terms of questions, because it sounds to me like even though, you might get a big paycheck, if the client perhaps is somebody that is almost trying to push you in a direction that does not meet the standard of who you are, number one, as a person, but then definitely the core values of your organization, you're like, maybe that's a hard no. That's a hard
Mm-hmm.
no, because above and beyond being compensated for the great work that you do, you still have to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and say, did I deliver on justice? Did I deliver on equity and all of the other pieces that go along with that? And I like that you've said that, because I think leadership is not just what you provide to people in terms of service that you're giving to them, but it's also what you deliver in terms of what you'd like the world to look like if people would embrace some of what you're doing. Do you want to share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sounds on there. One client I just wrapped up working with last month, and they say, they're in like my dream client. I did some anti-racism work with them. They had already done kind of that groundwork. They've already done their anti-racism 101 training. They've already done their statements. They've already done, what everyone's doing in 2020 and 21. They've already done that. So I could come in and build on that firm foundation that they built. They're very community centered, very community minded.
Mm-hmm.
So anything that we did had to include community members,
Mm-hmm.
what feedback they've given, what they would like to see, the barriers and challenges that they experience. They do employment. They were looking at their employment service provision. So, when people of color are looking for work, black people and other racialized people, what are some of the challenges that they face in recruitment, in hiring, when they're actually at the job?
Mm-hmm.
And then, so I know that those are the kinds of clients that I want to work with. I know
Mm-hmm.
that those are the kind of folks the kind of organization that I want to work with. And I met with a business coach a week or two ago. We were talking about that. She's like, "Oh, Michelle, it's like you're the DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion doctor.
Mm-hmm.
You come in and help organizations. You try something, maybe it's worked, maybe it's not working, and you help them kind of fix it." I'm like, "Ooh, I like that DEI
Mm-hmm.
doctor."
Mm-hmm. That's nice.
So, right. So understanding who my ideal client is. They're not always at the beginning stages. They've maybe done a couple of things around diversity, equity, inclusion, and they
Mm-hmm.
want to go deeper.
Yeah.
They want to go deeper. So by keeping that in mind,
Mm-hmm.
the kind of organizations that I want, the clients that I want to serve, then I can make those decisions. Is this, are they at the stage where I need them to be that I can come in and build on that foundation that they built? Are they fully committed? Does it show up in their actions, on their website? When I speak to their team, are they also speaking in a way that is aligned with values? So
Mm-hmm.
that's how I'm able to do that bit of assessment. But then I can give you an example where I saw a project and I kept thinking, I don't know if that's quite what I want to do. But it's a 1 year contract. It'll give me income because, of course,
Mm-hmm.
income is the gasoline in the engine of a
Yeah,
business. If there's no
sure.
gasoline, we can't go anywhere,
That's
right?
right. Yeah.
So I said, okay, but I'm gonna apply. So I applied. I was invited to an interview, and during the interview, I'm like, no, this isn't going to work for me. There was one question about conflict management.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'm very comfortable with dealing with conflict. I know Canadians, we kind of shy away from it, but I'm
Yeah.
okay. I
Yeah.
can approach it, directly. I don't have a problem with that. So then one of the interviewers came back with a follow-up question. Well, I wanted to unpack that because, depending on culture, some people wouldn't be comfortable with that. So when she started saying, she used another term, and to me, I thought, uh-oh, is it that this angry black woman
Uh-huh.
stereotype that's
Yeah.
being played out here,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So then I said, no, I wouldn't be combative. I wouldn't be, I would be sensitive and thoughtful in how I approach it, but I would approach it.
Yes.
And then afterwards, I thought, in that instant, my cultural background was erased.
Yes.
Because from my culture, we are
Yes.
very direct people.
Yes. Yeah.
we we deal with conflict, we disagree, and we move on.
Yes.
You say what we have to say,
Mm-hmm.
and you may not like it,
Yeah.
but I'm going to say what I have to say, and then we move on.
Yeah.
I find that culture kind of clashes with the Canadian mainstream culture of
Yeah, very
where
passive.
we're kind of right, very passive. We're kind of the ostriches with our head in the sand. Oh, we get along with everyone. We're
Sure.
fun. There's no conflict. We're nice people.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, things are brewing underneath. So in that moment, I was like, okay, this contract, this client is not for me
Mm-hmm.
because there isn't it's not,
Yeah.
especially if that stereotype of the angry black woman is going to come up again and again. That
Sure.
means this work is not for me.
Yeah.
Right. So those are ways that I assess who I want to work with. And again, going back to that piece of that intuition, I knew
Mm-hmm.
initially that that's not quite the work that I wanted. I
Yes.
don't know about this contract, even though it is research and evaluation and national project,
Yes.
exciting, something kind of work that I wanted to do. But there was that, thing at the back of my mind saying, maybe not. And, I did listen to it, I did honor it, and I went forward. And then I had that moment in an interview where, like, yeah, I don't think this is going to
So I've got one more question. Um,
work.
you said this a few moments ago. You said going deeper, right? So we've had this great
Mm-hmm.
conversation on leadership, equity, and diversity, and of course you've added some nuances around core values and sticking with your gut feeling on some stuff, right? But my next
Mm-hmm.
question to you then is, in your opinion now, as an entrepreneur, as a CEO, as a leader, what does going deeper look like? So everybody's talking about diversity,
Mm-hmm.
inclusion, etc., but there's going to be something that comes after this. Have you identified any of that
Mm-hmm.
yet?
Oh, what a brilliant question, Andre. For me, going deeper means that, all right, we're not just trying to achieve diversity, so in getting more women, more Black, Indigenous, racialized folks, more people with disabilities in organizations into leadership. We are also looking at justice. So for me, the end result of diversity, equity, inclusion work has to be justice. So
Mm-hmm.
everyone is treated fairly, is treated with dignity, is treated with respect.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so So DEI 2.0,
Mm-hmm.
let's
Yeah.
say,
Yeah. Yeah. That's what
for
I'm.
me would
Yeah.
be right would be about talking being focused on achieving justice,
Okay.
right? So that when we look at, I just reading an article this morning about the level of home ownership in Canada,
Mm-hmm.
how for a Black-led household we are about 30 percentage points less.
Mm-hmm.
So justice for Black fat households is that we have home ownership rates that are at least at that of white led and fat
Mm-hmm.
households.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that for many folks, home ownership is the largest investment most people will make. It is, usually the asset, the greatest asset people will own, and how having that asset creates other opportunities for households. So
Mm-hmm.
if we are 30 percentage points behind, we're losing out. So justice will be,
Right.
what are some programs and initiatives to increase home ownership
Yeah.
amongst Black folks?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So, yeah.
um, I want to give you an opportunity. I know you're not tracking the time. I am. And this has been such a really good conversation. I can't believe it. But I do want to say this. I want to give you an opportunity to maybe consolidate all of what you've
Mm-hmm.
said. Is there a takeaway that you would like people to hear? You know, there may be a young woman that's listening, and of course, you have that voice. There may be a young black woman, you have
Mm-hmm.
that voice. But maybe there's a man, whether he's black or white or indigenous or whatever. I think that you've talked about a lot of really good principles. Is there a takeaway that you would like us to make sure we're clear on before we end
Mm-hmm.
our conversation today that would really just cover it all?
I would want to encourage everyone to be authentic, be true to who you are. This world will tell you that you need to look this way, you need
Mm-hmm.
to speak this way, you need to dress this way. But at the end of the day, that may not be you. So be true to who you are and be guided by your principles, by your values, As well, for business owners and leaders, create organizations where people can show up as themselves,
Mm-hmm.
where people feel welcomed, where they feel safe, and
Mm-hmm.
where people can be healthy. Because unfortunately, a lot of workplaces are making people from equity deserving groups sick. So whether that's increased hypertension, increased anxiety, increased depression, and we're seeing heart attacks, and a lot of this can be attributed to work. So let's create organizations that are healthy,
Mm-hmm.
that are engaged, where people feel engaged, where people feel supported, where people feel loved,
Mm-hmm.
where really they feel honored and respected. So that would be the key takeaway that I'd like to us to end with today.
Well, Michelle Davis, CEO, I wanted to say thank you so much for joining us. And I hope in the near future to have you come back because there is a part two to this conversation that has come as a result of this conversation. And we really do wish you the best and prayerfully we hope that everything that your mind has shown you before it has cemented, that it would come to pass and that you would be able to, as a result of your core values, really begin to stretch how we do leadership and how we do business because there are a lot of people that are making a lot of money and their organizations are growing and thriving, but the people, the human resources, they are suffering because there is a lack of justice at times. So again, to those of you that have joined us today, we hope that you've learned and been inspired through the lens of a wonderful person, a wonderful human being, Michelle Davis. We thank you for coming on. And again, to those of you that have enjoyed this conversation, feel free to reach out to me, bstlinc21 at gmail.com. And if you haven't subscribed, subscribe, share it, send this message all over the world because people need to know that there is another way to lead, and we know some people that are already doing so. Take care for now, and we hope that you keep well. Until next time, my name is Andre Anderson, both host and founder of BSTL. Thanks for joining us this week. Take care.